Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 1% Better Recruitment Podcast. I am your host, Charles Kiriakou. Today, I'm joined by Dale Williams. Dale, thank you very much for joining the show. As always, I'd like to get my guests to do a bit of an introduction on who you are, what you do, your markets, etc., etc. So, yeah, just give us a bit of an intro.
Yeah, hi Charles. Thanks for inviting me on. I'm Dale Williams. I'm Welsh. I'm from Cardiff. Most of our business operations are head office in Cardiff. I've been in agency recruitment for 18 years now. Just over 15 of those have been as an agency owner. Started life as a 360 sales recruiter on a perm desk, placing kind of go-to-market salespeople. Just ventured out by myself in 2009. Had an entrepreneurial background, came from an entrepreneurial family, so wanted to do something for myself, took the risk, was too naive at the time to realize what would come with that. But here we are 16 or so years later. We've gone from one brand to a multi-brand operator. The Recolution Group is the name of our organization. And within the group, we've got four brands, which are Yoke Recruitment, which is a multi-sector white-collar professional services agency. We've got Connexus DX, which is our SAP digital transformation brand, primarily focused on contractors in the SAP marketplace globally. We've got Meritus Talent, which is a newer brand to our organization. It's the youngest one. It's just under 2 years old. And Meritus is a niche brand in aerospace, defense, and space. And we've got City Executive Search, which is our boutique C-suite search business, which primarily operates UK markets. So two of our brands, Yoke and City Exec Search, are quite UK-centric, and then Connexus and Meritus are global in terms of their footprint and client base.
Love it. Awesome. Well, look, we've got some awesome topics to go through for the listeners today. I think the first place to start, I guess, Dale, is the fact that, yeah, you are a multi-brand operator, right? It is, I would say, a big ambition for a lot of businesses is to have like a group company and then have quite a few different subsidiaries. I've worked in businesses where that has and hasn't necessarily worked, and I think it's quite a tricky thing for people to really crack. So it'd be good to kind of understand how, yeah, essentially how you got to that place where, you know, you may have started one brand and then another, etc. But just talk us through kind of that journey.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it was quite organic, and it pretty much, we ended in this place through trial and error more than design, really. I wouldn't say that I started out with intention to become a multi-brand operator. For 10 years, Yoke Recruitment started as a sole sector agency and expanded into 5 others. So we ended up operating in 6 sectors, which were sales, marketing, finance, legal, technology, and engineering. But once we hit those kind of 6 sectors, we noticed there was a lot of land and expand opportunity within those sectors, but that brand was leaning towards a certain demographic of customer and candidate. And that's when we started to have thoughts of, okay, well, look, as a leadership team, what do we think we should do if we're going to expand into other markets? Do we continue to have them as a department of an existing brand, or do we start a new brand? And I think most owner operators will arrive at that kind of dilemma when they are interested in entering new markets. You know, do you dilute the current offering? Do you dilute the branding that you've got, the markets that you've become known for, your key messaging? Do you dilute that by continuing to open new business areas, or do you have brands that specifically represent those interests? We took the latter route, which is how we then became a multi-brand operator. We wanted to enter into executive search. We wanted to enter into SAP to increase our contract offering because we were very perm heavy at the time. We wanted exposure in aerospace, defense, and space, and we had an internal recruiter that was driving a lot of growth in that market. So really we found a model that worked for us because when we wanted to enter new markets, we were quite efficient internally because we invested heavily in a marketing team really early on. So it meant that we could create a brand quickly and efficiently and take it to market relatively low cost. And if you launch a brand within a group, because you've got the infrastructure, the history of trading, the insurances, and when it comes to winning business, you've got a much lower barrier to entry to start at the top of the food chain when it comes to customers. So really that multi-brand operator model was using the strength of the group to grow exciting niche businesses And yeah, as I say, probably more accident by design, but in its current format, very much well thought out and designed as our model for our future growth.
Hey guys, quick one before we jump back into the episode. If you are a recruiter who feels like half your week disappears into admin, follow-ups, data cleaning, and jumping between several different tools, then listen up, because this episode is officially sponsored by SourceWhale. SourceWhale is the recruitment productivity platform, and I don't just mean another tool that you'll forget to use. I mean the tool that actually gives you your time back. You can run your entire desk in one place. Outreach, sourcing, data enrichment, multi-step email and LinkedIn sequences, inbox management, and even call notes. It's all there, synced, automated, and according to their stats, recruiters using SourceWhale see 56% higher response rates, double the pipeline, and approximately save around 8 hours of admin every single week. If you're like me, admin as a recruiter is the devil, and this productivity platform really helps you save a load of time. So reach out to SourceWhale, go to sourcewhale.com. It's a fantastic platform. I've used it myself. I really believe in it, and I'm super grateful for them sponsoring the podcast. Let's get back into the episode. And because a lot of people that I've spoken to that have gone down this road of having different brands within like the main sort of group holding, is they have like a really successful biller or a director that perhaps spots a different market, and then they maybe present them like a business plan of like setting up a different unit, for example. What was that similar, or how did it kind of look for you guys?
So yes and no. Of the three brands that were born after our founding brand, Yoke Recruitment, two of those came from outside of the industry, outside of the organization, I should say. So recruiters, but recruiters not from within our walls. The latest one, Meritus, came from a recruiter that did exactly what you just said. So he'd been with us working in our technology division. He built a niche within aerospace, defense, and space. And that was an internally driven business plan, organically driven by the individual and supported by us.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. So when you've got multiple brands underneath the main group, what would you say have been like some of the challenging moments that you've had to go through with so many different brands that you're managing?
Yeah, so it's not a perfect model and it's not going to work for everybody, right? And depending on how you view a business, it will be right for some businesses to do less really well as opposed to a lot poorly. So I do think you can spread yourself much too thinly. I mean, I'm a typical entrepreneur. I magpie, I see shiny things. I'm focused enough to grow a business to a successful point, absolutely. But I do like new things. So me as an entrepreneur, it suited my own personality traits to have these extra brands because it's something new and exciting and fresh to work on. And really, I work at my best when I'm fueling something. So it suited me as our group CEO. And then as long as I've got the infrastructure within the senior leadership team and I've got the managing directors to then do and kind of build the teams and focus on the sales side, the shared services side looks after the kind of guts of the business, the more boring stuff, the compliance, the admin, etc. But when I say it's not for everyone, I guess in terms of pros and cons, I mean, if the more narrow you are, arguably the faster you can scale within a singular niche. But you are higher risk if that market hits road bumps, if it faces volatility, if anything to do with that market faces decline. I think you are at a higher risk of having ebbs and flows that are uncontrollable. The more markets you're into, a really high niche operator would argue, well, we're absolutely fixated on what we want to do. We do not diversify. We do not move out of our lane. We're inch wide, mile deep within this vertical. And great, that works while the market works. But if the tide turns against you, it's problematic. Whereas if you're more diverse, you can ride those waves a little bit more consistently. And what we like is the fact that different departments within our business will have those ebbs and flows, but you can get a more consistent revenue line over time. So there's pros and cons to both. I think with the group, you can cross-sell brands, so you can open a customer up in more ways than one. And the more departments that work with the business, the more wallet share you have from that account. Some of the cons are things like you do end up paying for the same things multiple times. So if you need to operate 4 websites, then you're paying the costs 4 times depending on how you run those websites. So you get a lot of duplication. And you also get a lot of replication. So centralized efforts, particularly at a marketing level. If you're marketing one brand, you might have a brochure. If you're marketing 4 brands, you've got to replicate the marketing efforts for those
Yeah.
brochures, those case studies. You've got to manage multiple social media profiles for a brand. For a singular brand, you've got to manage multiple social media profiles.
Mm.
Therefore, the more brands you get, the more tentacles grow on your social media requirements. So it can be challenging for centralized marketing,
Mm.
and it can be challenging for centralized messaging. When you invoice a client, are you invoicing as a group? Are you invoicing as a brand? How do you get your messaging right to market so they're not
Mm.
confused by your email signature having other companies on it, or
Yeah.
being invoiced by a group when the brand did the work, however that works. So there are intricacies you've just got to be aware of that come out, I suppose, that little bit later.
Yeah, because I've worked in a business before where we had like the group, and then we had different, brands within that, and everyone had their own social media, their own website, etc., etc. And I quite liked it because it seemed like, yeah, we're all working towards the same thing, but we have our own kind of sub niches, and that particular brand was only focused on that market, if that makes sense, rather
Yeah,
than a big group that says we are IT specialists, but
yeah.
we've got a guy that does SAP, a guy that does this, a guy that does that, a girl that does this, and it's just all of a sudden that brand. And maybe you can speak on this because you mentioned about the making sure the branding was right for these different subsidiaries. But when you've got a recruitment agency that is just so broad, but actually realistically they've got sub little teams that are super niche, kind of the messaging almost looks a little bit like, oh, actually, are you specialist? Even though maybe they probably are.
Yeah, I think the key to that is building bridges between the brands internally, because you can have competitive moats externally, because that's where your niche really kind of grows a wider moat. But those moats need to be contained to external market forces.
Mm.
I think the key to getting a group structure right is having one cohesive way of working across a group of companies so that it feels like you're one team,
Hmm.
you're just fighting different fights.
Mm.
Because it's challenging to get to a situation of having a business where you've got, and this can happen in a singular brand, if you've got islands and the tech team don't speak to the finance recruiters and the finance recruiters don't speak to the engineering recruiters. So I think that you need to get that right even in a single brand business, but it's even more challenging in a multi-brand operation because people are generally invested in the brand that they represent.
Mm.
So you do need to work tirelessly on creating good shared values. And
Mm.
that's something that we got right a long time ago, because there's a clear awareness that we are a group, therefore we have a group employee value proposition, we have a group recruiter playbook, we have a
Mm.
group set of standards, we have a group set of values. So you've got your internal DNA, but we go to market in very different ways depending on the type of recruitment that we're doing.
Mm. That makes all the sense in the world. Like to make sure that all of those processes and everyone's kind of understood the actual group itself, but then each subsidiary has their own unique flair on how they go to market and things. Because I've always found that a little bit of a challenge when trying to get the different brands to cross sell, because they're equally like doing a bit of internal competition, right? Team
Yeah,
A wants to beat Team B, and
yeah,
then there's like incentives and stuff like that.
yeah.
So it's always been a bit of a challenge for leaders to try and incentivize that cross selling when they're competing against each other. Like, how have you kind of dealt with that?
Yeah, very pertinent point. It's a fine balancing act. I think it comes down to hiring, and it's who you let in the door.
Mm.
Because if you hire the right personalities for the culture that you're looking to build, then those problems won't exist as readily. Um, and if you allow toxic behaviors to creep in because somebody prioritizes competition over the business's interests or the client or candidate's interests and so on, you just got to nip those low standard behaviors in the bud at the root. So I think the way that we've done that is that we've made sure first and foremost we've got our hiring right, and then as part of the induction, if you join a brand in our group, you aren't inducted on that brand. You're
Mm.
inducted on the basis of you're a group employee, and this is the department that you work for that happens to be called a brand. But you are inducted on an understanding of knowing all of the other brands. We don't want to send somebody out into the world representing Connexus, and then a client asks them, "Oh, who are Meritus?" and that recruiter doesn't know who Meritus is. So it comes down to education, training, making sure that people are aware of the group. We're very visible with our business plans. So like our Microsoft SharePoint is centralized, and on
Mm.
you have like our business plan is literally there, which is a case of any employee can join the business and read it and say, oh, okay, so as a group, this company is looking to achieve these things, and I'm part of this brand, and these are my responsibilities, so that these small parts all add up to the whole.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's really, really important. And I think also to your point, something that I think some businesses when they're scaling and perhaps ones that are trying to go and set up different brands, it's so ironic, isn't it, that in the recruitment sector we're really good at finding the right candidate for the right job and vice versa. But when it comes to internally hiring, some people go, oh, they seem like a good person, they seem like they got a good attitude, I'm going to hire them, and then they take a punt. Like I've seen so
Yeah,
many recruitment businesses that do that.
yeah,
The worst instance is when people go, they're like me, and I'm going to hire them because they're like me, and it's like
yeah.
it rarely works out. So when you've scaled these different brands, and I'm assuming within each brand they might still have the shared values of the group, but you might have a different kind of culture within each brand and stuff. But what things, if anything, have you done that or what things have you learned, I suppose, when it has come to hiring? Because I know so many people have gone through peaks and troughs with hiring good and bad people. Like what would you say have been some of the biggest lessons that you've learned since going through and hiring loads of people? Hey, if you're a founder or a leader within a recruitment business and any of these problems resonate, I'd urge you to reach out to me. If you notice inconsistent performance across the sales team, if you notice that you're trying to scale your business, but it's not really sustainable the way that you're doing it, and perhaps you're in that tricky situation where new people are coming into the business, draining the time of billing managers and senior consultants, and the top billers are being diluted by those guys, and it's quite difficult to upskill the trainee consultants, and typically that ends up in having retention issues. If any of those problems resonate with you at all, it's worth us having a conversation. We are currently building something that I firmly believe is going to completely change L&D and recruitment. And I'd love to tell you a little bit about what we're doing, get your insights on that, and perhaps it might be something I could personally help with. So yeah, if any of those problems resonate even slightly, reach out to me. All my details below this video. Let's have a chat.
So firstly, there's no silver bullet. It's the hardest thing to get right, and it's trial and error. So anybody getting it wrong is just joining the queue, because
Yeah.
getting recruitment right for your own business is, for me, always evidence of the reason we exist. Because it's very hard to do recruitment. So if
Mm,
we're facing those problems as organizations, our clients must be facing the same things. Therefore, the pain is there. Therefore, the need is there. Therefore, we've got a solution. So it's very difficult, very challenging. I think that naturally everybody follows two models in recruitment. One is the grad model, the rookies, hire, train, fail fast,
mm,
or get speed to productivity within 12 to 18 months. And the latter is, okay, well, let's try and attract recruiters out of other organizations that have got experience, that are, for whatever reason, disillusioned with their current employer, and let's give them a better place to ply their trade. And both come with strengths and weaknesses. If you take rookies and they don't have any bad habits, and they're raw and they're hungry and they're motivated, you can train them the way you want. But if they haven't been through hardship and they've not had many jobs and they don't know how good they've got it in the company, they might tap out too soon because they think that it's hell, when actually they just didn't give themselves enough time to see the good times. You hire experienced people and they go from one agency to another. Good doesn't look the same in any two agencies.
mm,
So a top biller in one company isn't going to be a top biller in another company just because they believe they will. So experienced hires can fail miserably as well, because no two recruitment companies are the same, no two markets are the same. So for us, even though those are the two routes to market that we've trial and errored a lot over the last 15 years, I would say the part of that we've had the most success in, to give away some of our secrets, is meeting in the middle of that. So we decided to stop taking rookies that hadn't had at least two jobs in another environment, and a minimum of 1 year's sales experience. That could be inbound or outbound, upselling, cross-selling, or cold selling. And a maximum of 1 year in another agency if we felt they were in an agency that wasn't supporting them.
mm,
So it created quite a narrow gap. But the reason we did that was because we felt that everybody that hadn't had at least two jobs, the data was saying that if you hadn't had two jobs before you joined us, you didn't realize how good it was to work here.
mm.
Therefore, you had to go and work in a British Gas call center first, or stack the shelves in Tesco's, wherever it was. You
Yeah.
needed to see what bad looked like in order to appreciate what good looked like. And then as soon as somebody becomes sort of 1 year plus in an agency, um, there are some good ones that stay and then get chat on, excuse my French, and end up leaving. And if you get them, they're great. But in general, people with a lot of experience, over a year experience in agencies that are moving, are either moving a lot because they're not that great and they're moving for salary, um, or they're getting kind of pushed out and they're trying their hand in another organization. So you just have to be really, really careful with your due diligence at that end. So we felt that that middle data set, which was, okay, they've had 2 jobs at least, they've got some sales experience behind them, and they might have dipped their toe into recruitment or the equivalent. We can get those people and make them better.
Hmm. Yeah, I quite like that. I've always liked the idea of getting people with some sales experience that isn't necessarily recruitment, but then on top of that, like people that have worked in agencies. And I think your example there of the consultant that may have been in a job for a year and a half or so, and there's a lot of agencies out there like this. Trust me, I know because I've worked for some of them where you don't get any training. The commission structure might be really, really poor. The
Yeah,
culture's cowboy or whatever you want to call it. But
yeah,
because it's your first job, you just go, well, I know so many friends of mine and my wife's friends that have done recruitment for a year and vowed never to do it ever again because of really, really bad experiences in the industry.
yeah.
And
And unfortunately, they were probably in the wrong company culture or environment, and actually, they might have been good. They were just in the wrong organization, and
it's
that's why there are too many people that leave our industry too soon because they
yeah,
just joined the wrong company.
it's so true. And I look back at my career and I don't regret the companies that I worked for when I first started because I started doing contracts like healthcare recruitment and I had a lot of fun in the early days and it was great. But I'll never forget that we didn't have KPIs, we didn't have any tech stack whatsoever, didn't even know L&D was a thing. Like we didn't
Yeah,
have a single ounce of training. I think we watched some like Mike Walmsley DVDs once and that was about it. But the directors would always say the classic term, the grass ain't always greener, like
yeah,
to just try and keep you right. And then when you start speaking to recruiters about 2 years into the job and you tell them
yeah,
what salary you're on, not that salary for a good recruiter is the most important thing, but when you realize you're being underpaid by like 15 grand and you're like,
yeah,
this is a bit suspect. And when you tell them how much commission you're earning on how much you're billing and you go, wait, what? I
yeah,
can earn double that in another agency and I get training and I get LinkedIn and all these types of things. So
yeah,
yeah, there's two things there because I think for people getting into the industry, like I've mentored quite a few like people looking to get into the industry. Like you got to be really particular with like your due diligence on the company, and then vice versa for founders like yourself. Like looking at people, how many like recruiters that have been in the job for a year have got the gift of the gab? You go, wow, this person's incredible, and they've got decent figures, but they just blagged it, and they're just
yeah,
really good at blagging it. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Well, yeah. Most people who interview are salespeople first, so the interview really is the most useless task that we go through, and we still to this day do the same thing to hire people and go through the interview process, right? So maybe there's something in that because it's not been there's not an alternative really at the moment, in order to onboard a member of staff, right? You see a CV, you meet somebody, you go off your gut feel. Yeah, you can psychometrically profile them, you can reference them, but it still ultimately comes down to judgment as to whether you hire someone or not.
Well, I spoke to a founder earlier this week, actually, and we were talking exactly about this topic. And I asked him the question because he said a very similar thing. Like, there's not really many other things that businesses do, but we think we've got a way now that we've trialed and we think it's working. And I was like,
Yeah,
well, what are you doing? And he went, basically, what we're doing is I'm finding a list of like 10 passive candidates that have engaged with our brand before, know us, that don't mind speaking to somebody new, and then part of the interview process is we have a chat with them just to make sure that they're normal and their CV and all the rest of it. And then
yeah,
basically sit them at a desk for a few hours and go, right, here's our candidate qualification format. Here's how we structure calls. These are the types of
yeah,
questions. Go. And
yeah,
then people come in after the interview, go, hang on a minute, I've got to make sales calls. I've not got the job yet. And they go,
yeah,
go, like be amongst it, be around the sales
yeah,
guys, make some sales calls. And
yeah,
then he's managed to see like which ones are picking things up, asking the right questions, both to managers, consultants, and candidates on the
yeah,
phone. And then you get some people that, third voicemail in a row.
yeah,
Oh, this isn't good. And it's just like,
yeah.
mate, this is the job. Like, so I think that's quite a unique way. I don't know what you think. I know a lot of people are a bit,
Yeah.
funny about getting people
It's,
on the phones like that in an interview.
it's something we've done. We I believe in the concept. It's something that we've done, and it's something that we still do. I would say we do it sporadically. One of our hiring managers is particularly keen on it. It's normally something that we do if we're um, of the opinion that it's needed as opposed to doing it as gospel. But I definitely think it's a high value item to test, because first and foremost, you'd see if somebody's just prepared or willing to do it, right? Because if they're not prepared or willing to do it, then it tells you a lot about their fear, and perhaps that fear would hold them back if they did get the job.
Yeah, absolutely. So for people in your business then, because when we first spoke, we talked a little bit about high performance culture, which we'll come on to in a moment. You've obviously got a mixture of, you've hired grads in the past, or trainee level type people, and got some people with some sales experience. But from your experience, what things have you noticed and done to essentially get people from zero to hero, get people that haven't built yet to then be very successful in the business?
Yeah, so I mean, the subject again doesn't have an answer which people can just implement that makes it kind of, you've cracked the code. I mean, getting people in and up to productivity is really the thing that holds back most companies from scaling. It's not winning customers or jobs or finding candidates and having more of that. It's having the individuals to do the winning of the customers and the candidates and placing the fees. So really, the more that you can do to invest in prioritization around speed of productivity once you've hired somebody, onboarding them the correct way, training them and believing in them and taking them through to productivity, the more payback you get on that investment at the back end. But obviously, the challenge for most recruitment businesses is that if you bring somebody in and they have got a zero and a zero and a zero, and that your cash is flowing out when there's no invoices coming in, then time and pressure start telling, and it can be, unfortunately, lead to quick exits. So I mean, for us in the early days, we were kind of in that camp, right? It was you've got no investments, you've got limited cash. All the cash that you've got is being generated from the invoices the founders are generating. You're then trying to find time to generate more invoices to put more cash in the bank to hire. There's a catch-22 situation, really, that you need to apply time to billing and fee earning while applying time to new starters. So there's a lot of trial and error at the start, and unfortunately that leads to a lot of wasted money, because actually if you hire slowly and fail fast, that's better than hiring quickly, a punt on 4 people and hoping one of them sticks, because the cash burn on them is significant. I think for us, it took us a long time. And this is why I don't think starting a recruitment agency is a flash in the pan to success or get rich quick scheme, because you don't know what you don't know, and learning the hard way over time, which for us was 7 or 8 years of grind. That hiring people and onboarding people is actually a time investment as much as it's a cash investment, is when it starts to change. So for us, after having the model of let's hire someone and let's put them on a desk and give them some leads, to let's hire someone, put them on a desk, and now at least they've got a senior consultant who can give them a bit of their time, to now let's hire them, give them some leads, they've got a senior consultant and there's a manager in that team now. Like, these things are just levels of growth. And if you're a growing agency, you're benefiting from more infrastructure, and the bigger the company, you do learn from that osmosis of hearing people in and around you on the phones. So for us, it was like we did have to get through a bit of attrition and some retention problems in those early days to get to critical mass. But when you get to critical mass and you can calm down a little bit, and you're not reliant on the one fee earner that brings in most of the revenue, you panic less about them leaving, and you concentrate more on generating better platforms for others to thrive. And that's brought us to where we are today, which is we've got a head of L&D, which is a guy called Matt Sykes. I mean, Matt's been with the business 11 years. Matt was a recruiter for the first 5 of those with us, and we converted him into an L&D and systems professional. So he's head of L&D and systems for us now. So what we've got now is a very consistent onboarding process. So our hiring is slower, our onboarding is slower, our induction is slower. But because all that happens more slowly, you're accepting that the results are going to come maybe slower in theory, but actually quicker, because they're being trained properly from the outset. So the first thing is, I would say that that was a long version of saying that this is something that you have to accept might happen over time if you don't have the ability to have all of the headcount, the infrastructure and the L&D person at the start, you can't offer people learning from observation if the team doesn't exist for them to observe from. And if you're a 100% work from home remote business, you can scrap that entirely because nobody's learning from anybody if you're working from home. The second part, I would say, that we got right in our later years as opposed to our early years is by putting progression in the consultant's hands. So businesses do this differently, but our progression structure is transparent. So from the point at which somebody joins us as an associate recruitment consultant, they can get all the way to executive consultant or team manager and all of the job roles that come in between that. And they automatically know what they need to build to hit that promotion, what band their salary will increase to if they get it, and then what they need to do for the next one. And they can do that consistently over 2 quarters. And we've got examples of people that have hit 4 promotions in 2 years because they've done it over 2 quarters, 2 quarters, 2 quarters, 2 quarters. Most of our leadership team here now have gone through that promotion structure to take them to, in some cases, now director roles. And I think that that's key. So you've got enough to concentrate on as a business owner while you're trying to work on the business or scale the business, to not worry about having individual development plans. Because if you've got 20, 30 recruiters, you're trying to go to 40, 50 recruiters, you want to get to 100, well, it's going to be nigh on impossible to manage the politics of everybody's individual development plan. Whereas if you just are true to yourself, regardless of opinions, and you just say, this is our development plan, this is how you achieve it, that either works for you or it doesn't, but they're the numbers, right? When people realize something won't change, it's amazing how much they get on board with what they need to do. Whereas the more chopping and changing you've got and the more variation that you've got, the more questions that come from it. So for us, creating that automatic progression structure, regardless of politics or opinions, that everybody is on between associate consultant right up to team manager level was a game changer. And then team manager above, you do go on to a personal development plan, which is more about business unit growth.
I love that. I've always loved the idea of just that clear, transparent progression structure in terms of what you actually need to do to what you actually personally need to achieve to get to that promotion. Where I've worked with businesses where it's, I really like this person, they've had a couple of good months, I think he deserves to be senior, we'll make him a senior, rather than actually having it clearly set in stone. And then all of a sudden you've got this riff in the culture because has that person got preferential treatment? And they've had a couple of good months because they pulled one big account, now it's gone and they haven't billed now for 3 months, and it's all a bit weird. So I really like the structure that you've put in place, and it's good as well that what you mentioned. I think this is a great lesson for people, that scaling, not necessarily ultra scaling really, really quickly, because that can break really quickly, but how many businesses just have a senior in the team and maybe an overarching billing manager that doesn't have time, but then having that infrastructure of, okay, you've got someone to mentor you, you've actually got a manager, and then also once you get to a situation, you've got a permanent sort of L&D person there that can help you on that that progression. I think it's such a powerful thing once you get to a certain level to have that infrastructure.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. And I think infrastructure is ultimately what a business stands and falls on, right? And there's a lot of sentiment in the market now for having less infrastructure, right? Work from home, do the hours you want, unlimited holidays, all this sort of stuff. And great, if you can make that work, power to you. But it's an incredibly complex way of managing a business of scale. And I think that actually, having some boundaries and some infrastructure, it's not there to enforce things that aren't going to benefit the workforce. In many ways, it really does benefit them, even if they don't know it from the outset. It's benefiting from them because it's improving their ability to learn quickly. It's then improving their ability to be noticed or seen or to progress through the ranks. I think that for a long time, every time I had a problem in the business, I was so intent on doing right by the staff that I consistently made changes. I think that happened for 7, 8 years, maybe even 9 years. And then there was this tipping point where it was like, well, I'll give you an example. Well, we change our commission structure every December. So every December it would be, okay, what problems have arisen from the commission structure this year, this calendar year? What fires have we had to put out? What moans, gripes, and grizzles have we had? And then let's deal with all of those. And we'd spend hours as an executive team trying to fix those problems, and we'd come up with this eureka solution. Here's our new commission structure, and we'd roll it out, and it's going to fix all our problems. And it's from Jan 1, this is our commission structure. And you know what happens? The following December, it's Groundhog Day. You're doing the same thing again.
Mm.
And, once we decided that we knew what we stood for and we said, well, this is how we pay commission, this is our structure, and we stopped making changes, everything goes quieter. And people start to understand, okay, this business is in control. It knows how it does things. There's a method to this. It's scientific. It's worked out in advance. Like it's how it's always been. So we're not a slave to that if there's an obvious problem. But what I'm saying is that as a business, as soon as we stopped making changes to please everyone, we realized that everyone became a lot happier.
Mm. That's quite interesting, actually. Because I've certainly worked in businesses where when work from home was like introduced after the pandemic, and like every business was offering work from home 3 days a week, and companies were struggling to attract people if they didn't offer a work from home. So then they
Yeah,
would change that, then they would change it back because productivity went down,
yeah,
and then they wanted this, and then they wanted that. And then it got to a point where it was like, actually, we just need to figure out what's a happy medium and just stick to it. And I
yeah,
think that's quite a vital lesson where you've shared there to people, because I think it is easy for a founder, especially if you're of the ilk where you just want the best for the people in your business. They're the soldiers on the front lines for you. You want the best for them, but there needs
yeah.
to be that happy medium between, this is what's right for the business, this is what's right for you. Okay, let's just meet in the middle, right?
Yeah, because otherwise it's just chaos. You think it's managed and controlled because you think that you're controlling problems and moans, but you can't create a perfect situation for everybody. Therefore, if you spend all your days as like an owner, founder, director, leader, manager, whatever, if you spend that time trying to fix all of these problems, you'll do nothing else because the problems will
Mm,
never go away because one problem is just a protagonist to another. So actually, when you just get to the point of being comfortable with who you are, it's almost like I call it business authenticity. It's like when you go through your teen years and you're not sure who you are and
mm,
think you're interested in doing a certain thing, but you develop and you mature. Like business maturity is exactly the same. You've got to go through that infancy and those teen years because most people go out of one agency into another and they think that they're going to do it better because they know better. But what they don't know is why the business do things a certain way. The same as you feel like your parents are doing things a certain way, and you can't stand them because you're a
mm,
teenager and you've got hormones and they're getting in your way. But you get to your 30s and you start to appreciate the lessons that they taught you. Business is exactly the same. You've got to go through these things that you believe are the right things to do, but you do in most instances, maybe not all, but certainly in our case, you make a lot of kind of quick, rash decisions because you think you're doing the right thing because somebody's had a gripe or a moan. Whereas the sooner that you allow everything to kind of stabilize and say, well, this is what we stand for, these are our values, this is our authenticity as a business, this
mm,
is who we are, that's going to work for lots of people and it's not going to work for some.
mm,
Then you just got to find these people. So we're not a
mm,
5 day a week, 5 day in the office, sorry, 5 days a week in the office business.
mm,
But if we were, we'd have to say, right, well, we are accepting that we will only be able to hire people that are 5 days a week in the office. And I
mm,
think that's okay if a business chooses that path.
mm.
Whereas we're 3 and 2, which I think most
Yeah.
are some form of that. And we said, look, we'll be 3 and 2 um, until it's not working. So
Mm,
if we maintain a high performance culture, then we will maintain a high flexibility culture.
mm.
So use it or lose it.
Yeah.
Here we are 5 years later.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're using it and it's
Yeah.
working, right?
Well, I was going to ask you about the work from home thing, because I think it's great. All right. Maybe I'm biased now because I've got a kid. I've got my own house, all the rest of it. When I was in my early 20s working in the city, living at home with mum, I wouldn't want to work from home. I just,
Yeah,
that wouldn't have made sense for me. Right. But,
yeah,
I do things after work and stuff like that. And I love the freedom, the flexibility. What I don't like, and I'm sure there's many recruiters and founders that will probably agree with me here, is that this office that I'm in here, as much as I love it and it's my own space, the baby sleeps opposite from me in the room next to me. My bedroom is right there, and I can hear my wife and my dog downstairs. There's a lot of
yeah,
distractions, and I think that the worst thing for me is because I would say I'm like a natural salesperson. I love selling. I love people. When I've been in offices, if I'm having a bit of a lull and I see a colleague on the phone, there's that competitive instinct in me going, fuck, that person's on the phone. I
yeah,
better be on the phone. And it might seem a little bit egotistical, but I always used to think I was one of the best people on the phone. So I would be, if it was a bit quiet, I would be on the phone and I'd just have
yeah,
people follow me to be on the phone. But then on another thing as well, I'm not perfect. I never will be. And, as much as I think I'm great, I'm not the best, right? I think I can always get better. Doing what I do, sure, I can download my transcripts, put them into ChatGPT and say, like, how could I improve that call? It's just long. I prefer it when I'm sat
Yeah.
next to someone and someone goes, that was good. Did you ask about X? Or this is
Yeah.
what I said. And that learning by osmosis, which you said there around how you've taken some of your consultants from zero to hero, that's something I really, really miss.
Yeah. It's something I'm really passionate about. I think that we're going to have a lost generation of recruiters that could have made it because they're starting their careers for businesses that are 100% remote. And those businesses are very bullish in the idea that they can get them to productivity in a remote capacity. I'm sure some will, but a lot more won't than will. So I do feel like it will take time for us as an industry to realize that there's been a lost generation of recruiters that could have come through. Having said that, I'm also very aware that the economy is driven in such a way in recent times that it's not as easy for businesses to bring on rookies and grads and to give them the time and the training. And the inclination has been to try to avoid that hiring model because businesses are needing to work from home in order to retain the staff they've got before even
Mm,
thinking about hiring again. So if your business, you might be a business like mine, I'm a perfect example of this. So I would love for us to be a 5 day in the week, 5 days in the office every week. That
mm,
would be my passion because it's how I started my career.
mm-hmm,
I'm utterly convinced that the only reason I'm a good recruiter is because I shadowed a recruiter and then was amazed at her capability and then applied those learns and just thought, wow, I've got to try and replicate what I've seen from this person. And that versus all of the classroom training that I had and received far outweighed anything. I don't remember any of the classroom-based theory stuff. I remember the boredom of it. I can visualize an ex-director and I can see him standing in front of the A board. I can't visualize what was on the A board,
mm,
but I know when I sat next to a recruiter in the Bristol office for the firm I used to work for, I know the impact that it had on me watching somebody in their element doing what they do as an expert. Um, so for me, I still fundamentally believe that if I could bring my staff into the office 5 days a week, that they would benefit, the new starters would benefit, and it would be a superbly useful thing to do. The contrast to that is that I'm very aware that the existing team are showing high levels of capability with the hybrid and flexible working model.
mm,
And to take that away from them would be unfair. So it's a really, really difficult one to solve because do you hire new people and give them the same flexibility, or do you require them to be in the office 5 days a week? If they're in the office 5 days a week, but their colleagues and their manager isn't, what are they actually learning? Because the whole point of bringing them into the office is defunct. So I'm really passionate about the problem, but I don't have a solution to it
mm,
myself because I think that it is at the moment one of the bigger challenges in our industry. I think it's settled down a little bit in recent years with people. There was a lot of that chopping and changing you mentioned, whereas
mm-hmm,
businesses have started to go, look, we've just got to pick something and stick to it,
mm,
regardless of what that looks like. Because businesses were doing too much chopping and changing, which led to a lot of movement and attrition in the industry.
mm.
But yeah, just a really difficult one to manage. It has been since 2020, and I think it will continue to be until at least 2030.
Yeah, I believe so. Like I said, look, because I'm a little bit older now, if I was a recruitment consultant again or had my own business, would I want to work from home a couple of days? Yeah, only because again, I've got a young child and like I
Yeah,
like spending time with my wife. I've got hobbies after work, see my friends, etc. But again, like if I was 20 years old again, like from today, I'll be honest, I would not join a company if they offered remote. I genuinely wouldn't because
yeah,
being in the office was and look, people have argued with me and debated with me on this and say, oh, people can be. I'm sure there are. But your point that you said a second ago, Dale, was just so valid that there are so many people that could have been great in recruitment, but they're working in their bedroom at their mum or dad's house.
yeah,
Like, I'll be honest, like most 20-year-old people, I'm telling you now, you'll be a lot more productive in an office surrounded by people.
yeah.
So no, I totally agree. I've got a question on this as well, actually, because we were going to talk about the high performance, and I'll speak to you after we finish because I'm trying to build something around learning by osmosis. So I'll chat to you about that after. I don't want to constantly plug during
Yeah.
the podcast.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit about how you've maintained that high performance culture with the work from home stuff, because I've seen so many businesses go around this a really bad way. And what I mean by that is basically using a work from home thing as a benefit rather than just this is how we operate, right? And to maybe dive in a little bit further, like, right, you've not really been performing, so you're going to stay in the office. And look, I get it to an extent, but you've brought people on and said everyone here works 2 days a week from home or whatever it is, and now you're taking that away. But that's kind of
Yeah.
part of my contract. Just seems a bit suspect, right? And I can understand frustration from some people, but then on the flip side, I understand the manager and director's perspective because it's like, well, you're working from home, we track all your data, and your activity is absolutely abhorrent there.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your thought process on that.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things within that. The first one that I would say is that I know of businesses that do what you mentioned, which is you almost link the benefit of flexible working to performance. Therefore, if you are performing at a certain level, you get flexibility, and if you're not, you don't. I think that's a ridiculous way to run a business, personally. I don't think it implies that you in any way trust an individual. I don't think it creates a contract between two adults. I think that it creates a really autocratic, sort of semi-toxic situation that you have to constantly deal with. Because if you've got two people and they work in the same team and one's performing and one's not, it's not always black and white as to why the one that's not performing isn't performing. What are
Mm,
the reasons they're not performing? What are the underlying reasons? So if the consequence is to drag them into the office like a form of punishment, I think that's a really poor way of doing things. So I think that the key, first and foremost, is to say, well, look, you mentioned children earlier, right? So I'm married, I've got 3 kids. They're 7, 6, and 1. They'll be treated the same way their whole lives. As you know, if I can get things right, because I think that you need to parent the same way and understand personalities,
mhm,
but you'll parent the same way in terms of standards.
mm,
So you need a framework of standards, which is things that you believe are right and wrong. And as long as your business says these are the things, the way that we do things in this organization, and people abide to those standards, then look more at what they're doing right and wrong, their outputs, their activities, how much L&D they've had, how much support they've had. And then at a line manager level, understand the personalities around that individual, the external factors going in their life, the internal factors going in around their performance. What's their desk look like? What does their market look like? There's a lot more to somebody's number than just have they hit the number or not. So I think for me, it's about like just having standards, because for us, everyone in the business is treated the same way and given the same flexibility, and it's linked to nothing.
mm.
But if somebody abuses our trust, then we will make it clear to the rest of the business that that person lost their job because of an abuse of trust. So there's an awareness that there's a consequence for somebody abusing the system.
Mm.
So we just maintain a very open and direct dialogue with individuals, which is that, we trust you to work from home, so do that. And if you don't, you just won't work for this business anymore.
Mm.
Um, and that's how we manage it. So yeah, consistency broadly across the entire business, I think, is key over having flexibility pegged to anything else. And when it comes to maintaining a high performance culture for those individuals when they're not under your nose the way that they might have been kind of in a pre-COVID way, that is where, for me, it comes down to recruitment's dirty word, if you like, the KPIs. Because in the modern world of recruitment, not having KPIs is supposed to be some kind of badge to be proud of, right? But it should be a badge of dishonor, because you're doing a disservice to all of the individuals who don't understand what good looks like.
Mm.
So we're proud to say that we have standards. You can call them KPIs if you want, but they're minimum performance metrics that determine whether you will or will not create the outputs that will make you successful in the job. So science tells us if you don't do a certain amount of things over a certain amount of time, you won't generate fees. If you don't generate fees, you won't earn commission. If you don't earn commission, why do you want to do recruitment?
Yeah.
So we just bring it back to standards, because the problem with doing it by billing is that you can have somebody that's got the work ethic that needs a break, a bit of luck, a bit of training, a bit of market direction. You could have two people on the same market with the same target. One's on a warm desk, one's on a cold desk. So if you just keep pegging flexibility as a benefit, you are going to end up with that volatility of having, you know, two children and one thinking, well, you're treating me in this way and you're treating them that way. Why did they get the chocolate bar and I didn't get a chocolate bar?
Mm,
The way they see it, they, you know, they're in different situations. Where you see it, you're just being specific and saying they're in the same situation, but you're not understanding any of the nuances. If you don't
mm,
understand the nuances, you can't explain the behaviors to the two children or the two employees, but you have to
mm,
be able to. Otherwise, you're going to have them run off in a huff, right?
yeah.
Because they don't understand it. So yeah, look, I wouldn't say that we're like a poster boy of company success for remote working. It doesn't
Mm,
always go extremely well. 90% of our people unquestionably just completely toe the line, and if anything, put in over and above. You can't, I think, personally, I would find it hard to believe that you can remove the 10-15% occasional piss takers or the people that ruin it for everyone else. But
mm.
if you then allow everyone else to suffer, like, why piss off 90% of your workforce because one person dropped the ball?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Mate,
I just
I'm totally on board. Everything you've just said there has given me flashbacks as to when I worked with this company that did exactly that. Like a couple of people were just not doing anything working from home. I mean, I had a coaching session with somebody and I had their Cube 19 up next to them and I was like, "So, how's the day so far?" It's like towards the end of the day. Oh, I
yeah,
just didn't really get through to anyone, Charles. It's like, "How many calls did you make?" Oh,
yeah,
dozens. I was just like,
yeah,
so I'm assuming you called from your mobile, right? It's like, "Oh yeah, largely." I was like, "Go on, take a screenshot."
yeah,
Oh, no, it's on charge in the other room. It's just like, mate, I've got your data in front of me. Like, you're just you can't blagger. Like, it's just what are you doing? And then you get the whole right. We're taking the work from home down from 2 days to one because some people can't be trusted. And I'm like, and I didn't know how to articulate it, but the way you articulated it, it made me smile because I'm like, that's the best way to do it. Is like, look, if you're gonna join a company and you know that they're hiring you and they trust you to work from home and you're not working when you're working from home, that shouldn't be you shouldn't be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna take that away from you and then almost subconsciously they're going to look at coming into the office on the day they're working from home as a punishment. Like
yeah,
it's absolutely ridiculous.
yeah.
Um, but do you know what I find quite fascinating, right? Work from home is a very new thing in the grand scheme of things for recruitment, right?
It is,
Before the pandemic, working from home, like what? Like my now wife, she works in the civil service. That working from home is just a thing because you've got a team of everyone from all over the country, right? I was just thinking that's so weird. Like we
yeah,
we had desktop computers and landlines, like we didn't have,
yeah,
it was old school. Um,
yeah.
but there's not like people that are managers now. They're managing people working from home. They've never really been taught how to remotely manage someone.
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's an
Yeah,
actual
it just
weird thing.
started. Yeah, it just
Yeah,
started with, right, your team are at home now.
100%. So
Yeah,
before it was like that we got really good leadership training by a guy called Ashley Rice, and I remember a lot of his training to this day. But none of it was remote stuff. And
yeah,
what was really interesting is when I transitioned to L&D, and it's like, oh, little Jimmy or Sarah over there is they're not doing well from home, and I'm like, okay, when in the office, how many times would you catch up with them throughout the day? They're like, oh, at least three times, like a morning kickoff, afternoon, like catch up, and then end of day wrap. I'm like, did you call them once when they're working from home? No, I trust them. No, they're working from home. But you would catch up with them 3 days a week, but they're right
yeah,
next to them. I'm like, yeah, mate,
yeah,
you've got Teams, you've got a mobile. Like, you didn't think to call them to see how their
yeah,
morning is, and
yeah,
they're checking. You don't do any of that, and then you're wondering why they're doing terrible working from home. So that for me is like there's a bit of contradictory there. People haven't necessarily had the training, so
yeah.
I just find it like you're almost setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah, definitely. But you're right. I mean, training is seen as a cost, particularly if you use an external provider. So lots of businesses wouldn't have seen it as necessary to say, okay, well, look, it's a change of the way we work and we're going to train you on that. They would have seen it as simple as, well, yeah, you're still their manager. They're just at home now and you're at home. So manage them. But just, you know, there would just been, it wouldn't have occurred to a lot of people that they would have needed to be training to do that differently. But
Mm.
as you rightly say, it's a very different skill.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. I mean, the first time I ever properly managed someone from home was when I was the L&D manager, and I remember sitting down with her, and she was very, very good, and I still keep in touch with her to this day. And I just said, like, I don't want you to think that this is micromanaging. It's more of a case I just want to check in and see what your plan is, and I'm going to kind of tell you what my plan is, and you can maybe critique what I'm going to do, and then we can make a bit of a game plan and who we're working with, what successes, etc. We ended up speaking like not even like a structured 3 times a day. But 3 times a day, I'd call her in the morning. She'd give me a
Yeah.
call at lunch. We'd send some voice notes. I've just had a really good coaching session. And then we'd sit down at like 5 to game plan the next day. And it was just quite natural. And there was never any like, oh my God, my manager's calling me again during the day or whatever. It was
Yeah.
just, we just want to have a bit of direction and also celebrate some of the wins as well. Because normally when we're in the office, it's, do
Yeah.
you want to go for a coffee? Oh, great work. Well, working from home, we don't see each other for that long. So it's nice to also just praise the positive behaviors, share some wins and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it's off topic a little bit, but it's not just the working element of working from home or seeing people and speaking to people that new recruiters lose. It's social circles. How many friends are made in work? I mean,
Big time.
partners, marriages. I met my now wife in work
Mm,
7 years ago. So those things are a lot harder, digitally and remotely as well. And as you say about you not wanting to work from an office if you were looking for a recruitment job in your 20s, we're seeing people come through now that do have remote roles that they took in COVID for agencies in other parts of the country.
mm.
We interviewed one literally last week whereby the reason for them looking to leave is that they are working remotely for an agency and they have done for 2 years and they're suffering because of it, and they're looking for a job now closer to home in an office because they want to get back out and meet people.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, well, maybe some people are going to need to go through the working from home thing for a year or two to work out if it is right for them or not.
Yeah, man. Like I said many times, like the work from home stuff is unreal for people that have got families and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. Because again, I used to work in the city of London, and the amount of times where the trains would be cancelled, and I'd be stranded in
Yeah.
London for like 3 hours, and then like, oh God, there's so many nightmares, right? But yeah. Anyway, look, I've really appreciated your time, Dale. There's been so many little pearls of wisdom in this episode, so I really appreciate your time. As you know, every episode I finish off with the same question. Following this particular episode, how can people get 1% better in recruitment?
Um, so 1% better. I think the only thing that you can do to get better at anything is to do what's in your control. And for me, that is to work hard because skills are learned, natural ability you're born with, your circumstance, the company that you work for, all of these things are kind of less controllable. But you can work as hard as you decide to work. So for me, if you want to be the best version of yourself in an organization, you've got to start benchmarking the people that look like what you want to be. So what does good look like and what do they do? You can't replicate their fees if you're working next to £1 million biller, but you can replicate their activity. So if you can try and get 1% better on their outputs, you are highly likely to succeed. So I think break it down and don't complicate it. Understand the data behind what the good people are doing. Try and get some sort of average around why they're successful and concentrate on the activity. It brings it back to KPIs. And if you focus on being even just 1% better than them on those activity metrics, what you put out into the universe will always come back in some way. It feels like information into black holes for a long time.
Hmm.
But as the inquiries start coming in, you realize that all those seeds you were planting are now starting to grow. So for me, I think that, yeah, get 1% better by being 1% better than the person you aspire to be, by focusing on activity, things in your control. There's uh, nothing that you can do that's more likely to change your future than working hard.
Unreal answer, man. Unreal answer. I have to say, my wife hates it when I say, "Is it in your control?" And she says no, and I say, "Why are you worrying about it then?" She hates that.
Yeah,
All my friends and everyone I work with is just like, "Yeah, you're totally right. That makes so much
yeah,
sense." Like all the people I coach, I'm like, "Right, this isn't in your control. Focus on that. That's how you're going to get better." My wife hates it. But anyway, good, great answer there, mate. So thank you very much again for coming on. I'll put all your details at the bottom of this episode, and for people that have made it this far, thank you ever so much, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much for watching this week's episode. If you've enjoyed it, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. I'd love to know what your biggest takeaway was from this week's episode. I am also looking for new people to come on the show. So if you are someone that has an interesting story, you've got loads of passion around a specific topic that can help the recruitment industry, or perhaps it's someone that you might know, please reach out to me. I reach out to a lot of people myself. I get a lot of people reach out to me, but there's so many people in this industry that I might not necessarily be aware of. So please put people in touch with me, or get in touch with me if you are interested in appearing on the show. We record most of the episodes at my house here in Welwyn Garden City. I do them remotely sometimes for international guests, and I've got a couple of studios in London that I can use as well. And I can also go to your office as well. I go to people's offices to do them all the time. But look, I really enjoy doing this podcast, and I'm always curious to hear people's feedback on what we can do to make it better, right? So if you have made it this far and you've got some ideas, I'm all ears. That rhymed, it sounded really silly. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate all the love and support, and we'll see you next week.